So it was almost exactly a year ago that I reviewed Fio's FA19, and in that review I kind of questioned, can Fiio do $1,000 plus IEM? And I guess the spoiler was, my conclusion was, I didn't think that they could. Now, a lot of people liked the FA19. A lot of people disagreed with me, but I don't think that was the IEM that proves me wrong. I think this one is. Hey folks, I'm Mark Ryan. This is Super Review, and today we're taking a look at the Fiio FX17. This is their new flagship IEM, and it is, unlike the FA19, it's not an all-balanced armature set. In fact, this is a tribrid set that is coming in with, hold on, let me check the driver configuration, 1 dynamic driver, 4 balanced armatures, and a whopping 8 electrostat drivers, which is frankly kind of nuts. But it also comes in shells that are entirely made out of titanium, and if all this sounds kind of expensive, it's because, well, it is kind of expensive. The FX17 that we're looking at today, it comes in at a price of around $1,500. I actually had trouble kind of nailing down the exact MSRP in the US, but around $1,500. Now, this is an IEM that I actually first heard back in, I want to say like February, during Can Jam in New York. And I was listening to a lot of things at Can Jam in New York, and frankly was not super impressed with a lot of them. But the FX17, I did get a chance to demo it, and I was like, that one was actually kind of good. So I was really excited to spend some more time with this at home. And for the past couple of weeks, I've had the FX17 on hand, been listening to it and comparing it to some other similarly priced IEMs, and I'm ready to let you know what I think. And I guess I've kind of already spoiled a little bit. I think this is a worthy $1,000 plus IEM, but exactly how good is it? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this review. But before we do that, a quick shout out to Fiio for sending in the FX17 for review. If you want to check out the FX17, I'll have it linked in the description down below. I'll find a shopping site somewhere where you can buy it. But with that said, let's go to the table and we'll talk about what you get inside this box, which is already on its own kind of impressive. We'll talk about the build quality, fit, comfort, all that stuff, and then we'll get into talking about the sound signature of this headphone, what it sounds like to my ear, and then again, how it compares to some other similarly priced IEMs, including the FA19, as well as the recently released The Audio Monarch Mark IV. Okay, with that said, let me put this IEM to the side. Let's just talk about the box for a second, because yeah, again, it's kind of an impressive box. I'm not going to be able to show you the entire thing on camera. It's a little bit large, but one thing I wanted to highlight, it's got like this magnetic clasp enclosure, which is not too unique, but it does also have a drawer system for the accessories. And I know like this doesn't really matter that much because this box is, I don't know, for most people, at least for me, like I don't hang on to boxes, so how much value does it have? I don't know. But nonetheless, I found it kind of fun and exciting, and I know people like to see that stuff. So there you go. That is the box and the packaging. But what you get inside of it is, frankly, just as impressive. Let me start with this. This is a little carry case, and this is pretty similar to what I've seen on other Fiio IEMs. The only difference is the color scheme here is actually unique. It's got kind of like an orange and green, almost looks like the Oregon Ducks. Is that the college team? Something like that. But yeah, I don't know, it's a nice little carry case. It's got separate compartments for your individual earpieces. Personally, this is not something I would use. Actually, you know what, maybe I would use it. I use cheapy little plastic boxes so that I can stack them, but your mileage may vary. What else do you get inside the box? I wanted to show you also this. I actually had this off camera. It also comes with little booties that the individual earpieces can fit into. Again, if you're trying to be really careful with the aesthetic, and I can understand why. Again, they are made of pure titanium, which I think I talked about. And they're very highly glossed, so if you don't want them to get scratched, it's nice that it comes with that. Again, though, something I probably won't use. It also comes with a little magnetic cable tie, which, again, is something I've never really used, but I always appreciate these. I just like magnets. I like playing with these things, but I don't actually use them. Do you? I'm actually kind of curious. Let me know. Apart from that stuff, you also get a microfiber towel, and I do use microfiber towels, sometimes on my IEMs, but frankly more so on my glasses. Gotta wipe off the smudges, but nice little microfiber towel, maybe a little bit on the small side. Okay, you also get this, which is an MMCX removal tool. So the cable, this is a spoiler for the cable, it is an MMCX cable, which is kind of what Fiio tends to do on their higher end IEMs. And some people will have issues removing MMCX cables, so they give you this little tool that ostensibly makes it easier, although I will say that, like, I don't really, again, use this personally. I don't have a strong issue using MMCX. Apart from that, let me get to the cable accessories later because I want to show you how many stinking ear tips they included. You think that's a lot of ear tips? Look, there's even more. I counted I'm going to count again just to make sure I counted right, but I think I counted seven different styles of silicone ear tips are included with the FX17. So here you've got one, these like clear Fiio ear tips. I actually haven't tried these yet. It comes with a set of spin fits, which is what these are, colored spin fits. The stock ear tip is this black ear tip, and you can see that it also has 4 more in here. So that's 3 sets of ear tips, silicone ear tips. It also comes with the Fiio FX17 ear tips, which is an ear tip. I've bought a number of these secondhand, not secondhand, I've bought them third part, or I don't know what I'm trying to say, aftermarket, because I like these ear tips a lot. They're just nice and short, and they're really good for getting a nice deep fit on a long nozzle IM. This IM is not particularly long nozzle, so I actually used the spin fits on it, which is a thing that helps elongate the nozzle and reach into my ear canal, but I'm getting a little bit sidetracked because we were counting ear tips. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 styles of ear tips. We have 5. This is like a double flange. I would probably never use that, although that might also extend the nozzle for you. That's 5. You got 6, 7 different styles of foam ear tips, which I love to see. I mean, I'm always saying that like the first thing you do when you get a new IM, my recommendation is spend 30 minutes to an hour just trying out different ear tips. If you have multiple ear tips, even from other IMs, try them on your new IM, see what fits your ear best. They will have some adjustments to the sound, but it's not really, at least my finding is that it's more to do with the fit and how well it fits you. Once you've dialed that in, then you can kind of worry about like the micro adjustments to the sound that you're making. But yeah, having 7 different styles of silicone ear tips to choose from in the packaging is frankly fantastic, and I love to see it. It does also include foam ear tips for people who like foam ear tips, but personally, I'm not a fan. One thing I am a big fan of though is this case here. So Fiio actually sells this like set of ear tips separately on AliExpress. If you want to buy this, by the way, you can. And it comes with a case. And I've bought a number of these, not because I use the ear tips, but just because I want this case. It's a nice ear tip case that you can see holds more than your average ear tip case, which is why I like it. But it does also come with an average ear tip case. Very interesting to see. So anyway, that is a lot of stinking ear tips. I'm gonna push those to the side real quick, and we're gonna start talking about these accessories, which is gonna lead us into talking about the cable. But just to highlight briefly, the cable does have a swappable termination, and it is the swappable termination mechanism that I like, where it is actually pretty compact. The length of it is really not any longer than your average, standard 3.5 termination. It does have a threaded retention mechanism, so the mechanism or the termination isn't going to pop off when you don't want it to, and then this just pulls out and you can plug it in, make it a balanced cable if you want. What's kind of cool, and because there's a lot of IMs have been doing this lately, Fiio actually also includes this, which is a USB adapter. Now, if you're not familiar with how this works, there is actually a DAC built into this. So you could plug this into your smartphone that doesn't have a headphone jack, that doesn't have, you don't need to use like a separate dongle. This is basically a dongle built into an adapter, and that'll just plug onto this cable so that you can plug it directly into your smartphone. I think, again, a really nice touch and an inclusion for Fiio. I've seen maybe dunno sells this, but I don't know that I've seen dunno include this with any of their IMs. So shout out Fiio. Okay, apart from that, let's talk about the cable and we'll start talking about the build quality on this IM. The cable is a nice cable. I do feel like color-wise, it feels like it's not the best match for this IM. It just feels a little bit pale. And because the IMs themselves don't have a lot of color or density or darkness to them, it ends up kind of making it feel maybe a little bit lightweight visually. That's kind of a small complaint because the cable is otherwise quite nice. It's a little bit on the thick, a little stiff side, but as you can see, it's not memory prone. Behavior is actually pretty good on it, and it feels nice and premium. I already highlighted the termination down there. It does have a relatively compact Y split up here. It has a chin slider that, can you believe it, actually stays in place. A really nice chin slider. And then of course it terminates into, you've got preformed ear hooks up top with an MMCX connector, as I already alluded to. Now, one small complaint about these MMCX, generally I don't really have a strong preference between MMCX and 2-pin, but my one preference for 2-pin is that I don't like these things to rotate. So sometimes there are MMCX cables that are nice and stiff and they don't really have that problem. These ones are a little bit on the loosey-goosey side. Like, they're not, loose is actually probably the wrong term, but they're just not as stiff as I like them to be. So small complaint, but there you go. Now we're getting into talking about the earpieces and the build quality in these. And there's some good stuff and some okay stuff. There's definitely nothing bad about the earpieces. What I will say is that I think aesthetically it's a little bit on the plain side. Like I mentioned, it is made out of solid titanium, which is cool, but they've polished it off so that it almost just looks kind of like a stainless steel. And now stainless steel is itself already pretty cool looking. But I do kind of wish that they went for maybe more of a matte finish because it just looks a little bit more special, a little bit more titanium. In fact, initially I just assumed these were stainless steel until I looked it up and found out, oh no, it's actually a titanium, which is kind of cool. For anyone who isn't familiar, I guess titanium is just known for being especially lightweight for how strong it is. Like the strength to weight ratio is pretty good. And these do actually feel a little bit lighter than I expected them to. So if they were a stainless steel, they'd probably be heavier. But they'd also probably look pretty similar. All right, enough talking about that. Yeah, I just think that also the pattern, like the design flourishes on this, are pretty minimal. Like if you're looking at it bang on, it's even hard to tell that there is a little bit of a fold and a crease in this design just because of the way that it bends and catches light. It just kind of looks like a flat slab of stainless steel. So a little bit on the plain looking side. Now the earpieces themselves, I'm gonna say are kind of large, like maybe a medium large, but they're definitely a little bit on the large side, as you might expect of an IM that has, okay, not just a lot of drivers, but specifically 8 electrostat drivers. If you're not familiar with those, look up a picture of an electrostat driver. They kind of look like balanced armatures, just very large, and they come with like a little bit hanging off of them that makes them even larger, like a power transformer or voltage amplifier. And so that just kind of increases the overall size of the earpieces. And well, they actually, I'll say they did a pretty good job given what they were working with, but they are nonetheless a little bit on the large side. The other thing I'll say in terms of fit and comfort before I actually throw it into my ear, and I will also pull out my caliper so we can measure the nozzle for you nozzle peepers, but it does have some folds in it. You can see that it's got this little fold to fit into the helix of the ear, but these are not especially like semi-custom molded. The other IEMs, something like the Fiio Audio stuff, it's going to fit more securely into the ear because of that. These will fit into the ear well, but they don't have a whole lot of purchase on the parts of the ear to create a whole lot of stability. So there you go. All right, so there you can see what the nozzle looks like with the ear tip off. Like I mentioned, it doesn't look particularly short, but again, I think just kind of given the girth and the size of this IM, I found the nozzle, I'm not going to say it was short, but it worked better for me with an ear tip that was slightly on the longer side, which is what these spin fits are. Okay, let's measure this nozzle. I haven't actually measured this before now, so I'm going to be as shocked and surprised as you. Looks like we're looking at about 6 millimeters, and that is for the lip. The lip is about 6 millimeters. If you go below that, it's going to be about 5.5 millimeters. So there you go. I would say it's kind of an average size, slightly on the large size in terms of a nozzle, but it was not a thing that particularly bothered me, but also I'm not one who is particularly bothered by nozzles typically. So let me throw it into my ear and just kind of show you what it looks like to fit. Zoom in up close so you can take a look at the Fiio FX17 in my ears. Like I mentioned, kind of like a medium largish shell. Like it's not stretching my ear the way that something like the Fiio Audio Monarch or even the Valhalla would do. But it nonetheless feels pretty bulky. The kind of thickness, I don't know, you say in to out is thick, but that's not so much something that you feel in the ear, apart from the fact that it, like I mentioned, it's not the most stable fit, and because it is, it is titanium, so it's lighter than it would be if it was stainless steel, but there is a fair bit of weight kind of like pulling it down out of the ear. So you are going to want to make sure that you get that fitting deep as possible, as close to the concha as possible, and mine does fit close to the concha, which is good. But also, I would recommend using this chin slider to just pull it up and add a little bit of extra tension there, which is going to hold it into place. And generally, your experience should be pretty good, which is what mine was. Though this is an IM that, again, I sleep with IMs, and usually the tell of a good fitting IM is if I wake up in the morning and it's still there. Usually that means that it wasn't uncomfortable enough for me over in the middle of the night that I had to pull it out, and I didn't have any issues with it falling out of my ear. And this is an IM that I slept with multiple nights and woke up with multiple mornings. So it did a good job there. All right. Let me just check the notes real quick before we move on from build quality. I don't think there's anything else to talk about, so we can start talking about the sound here on the Fiio FX17. So this is my measurement of the frequency response. If you want to take a look at this, I've got an unsquig link linked in the description down below. You can compare it to literally hundreds of other IEMs that I've measured on my rig with the same methodology, but of course we will do a little bit of analysis together. Quick aside, by the way, I am getting dangerously close to 100,000 subscribers, so I'm trying to ask people to help push me over. As it turns out, looking at my analytics, about 75% of the people that watch this channel don't currently subscribe. Now, I don't really care, like it doesn't really matter that much. Being a subscriber doesn't mean that much on YouTube, but I kind of want that plaque. So if you want to do me a favor, subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, if you have subscribed to the channel, thank you very much. And even if you don't, seriously, thank you guys for watching. But if you don't mind, subscribe. Back to the video. Right off the bat, some things about this frequency response were kind of interesting to me, because when I heard it, again, I was pretty impressed with the way it sounded. It actually sounded a little bit dark to me when I heard it in New York. I don't know if they made any changes versus that, but I remember it sounding maybe a little bit on the dark side, but also fairly warm and like bassy. I see the frequency response, and I kind of see why I heard that, although we'll talk about the treble a little bit. The treble doesn't end up sounding as dark as I remember it, but the bassiness of it is a really tasteful way to do bassy, okay? This is a sound signature that maybe kind of accidentally aligns fairly well with like this new meta tuning philosophy. It's not exactly, as you can see, it does have definitely more bass, more lower mid-range. It's kind of not too far off of what we saw with the Truth Ear Pure, actually. And in that case, like it was, you know, kind of a neutral, but very, very warm tilted. And that's kind of what you can expect from the FX17, is that it has like a nice natural sounding tonality, but it is definitely warm tilted. The low end comes forward, and then the top end, you can see here in the vocal region, there's a little bit of a pullback. It's a little bit on the relaxed side where you might hear vocals push forward, then not so much. But there is a fair bit of brilliance in the treble. And so I think overall, while there's some similarities here in terms of the frequency response versus something like the Truth Ear Pure, I think overall, it ends up sounding more contrasty. And in head-to-head with some other V-shaped sound signature IEMs, which we'll talk about in a little bit, it doesn't quite sound V-shaped in maybe the more traditional sense, but it nonetheless has some of that like contrasty kind of dynamic sounding sound about its sound signature. But let's talk about how it actually sounds to my ear. I mean, that is how it actually sounds to my ear, but we're gonna dive into more of the subjective stuff. So again, versus the Pure, yeah, I would say that this has a stronger sense of definition and clarity versus something like the Pure. It still has like a denseness to the sound, kind of a richness to the tonality, and it's like a very powerful sound. But it nonetheless has, again, a little bit more sparkle and a little bit more of that treble emphasis versus what you might have heard me describe about the Pure, which, just for clarification, was an IEM I liked a lot. The imaging, I would say, on the FX17 is solid. It's not quite standout, but I don't think it's going to disappoint anybody in terms of its ability to separate instruments, make them feel like they're all coming from their own sense of space. Again, it's not going to be presenting necessarily the widest sense of head stage presentation or anything like that, but I think that that's not a requirement. That's a nice thing to have, but it's not a requirement for me. Now, the bass in this thing on the FX17, I think is actually pretty awesome. I love the bass. It's meaty, it's powerful, it's got that mid-bass kick because it doesn't have that suck out in the mid-bass. So if you like a nice meaty kick drum, you're gonna get that here on the FX17. And it's really well textured too. I think that the bass is not just right in terms of its mix and the tonality, it's got like a nice sense of definition about it. Again, going back to that Truth Ear Pure comparison, the Pure, I love the bass balance and I love the tonal balance of that IEM, but the bass is not particularly engaging. The bass on this set is very engaging. I love it. And it also just does a good job of not bleeding into the mid-range, even though it is a little bit on the thick and kind of forward side in that lower mid space. I think that the contrastiness of the top end just keeps it sounding nice and crispy and clear without being super aggressive, I suppose. Now that said, my next words that I have on the notes are almost in the realm of aggressive. So it does have like a nice dynamic, visceral, and weighty sound. Like it's got a powerfulness to its bass. And even like the high frequency treble, when you're listening to hi-hats, they do have like a sense of weight behind them. But generally, I think that overall, like the tonality is just nice and natural, while still giving you that kind of dynamic, contrasty punchiness that you might expect of a more traditional like V-shaped sound signature. I would say like the only thing that maybe would criticize of this IM is the treble can be, like the mid treble specifically, can be a little bit on the crashy side. It's not entirely smooth, but it does have a well-textured mid-range and decent extension on the treble as well. Overall, the treble did not bother me, but if you are sensitive to treble and you know that you are sensitive to treble, this is definitely not like a safe playing treble experience. It's giving it that kind of, that definition, that weight, that excitement, and that dynamism, but the potential cost is that it might be a little bit too aggressive depending on your taste. Again, for me, it actually worked out well. So those are my listening impressions here of the FX19, but like I mentioned, we're gonna bring in some other IMs for comparison. And I'm gonna start with the easiest comparison, which is the IM I talked about kind of at the top of the show, which is Fio's last $1,000 IM. This is the FA19. Again, I reviewed this one a year ago. I did not like it. A lot of people liked it, so what do I know? But here's how I think these two IMs stack up now in comparison, and why I think the FX17 is so much better. Look, if you like the FA19, that's awesome. Try the FX17. I think you're gonna like it quite a bit more. Because in comparison, the FA19 has just got like farty, bloaty bass. Those are not the words you want to describe bass with, and those are the words that just immediately come to mind with this. And I'm listening to it, it even has like this little tuning switch on it, which no tuning switches on this, by the way, which you can engage more bass if you want, which just gets even worse. But yeah, the bass has no definition. It's just boomy, boxy, not great. The treble is also kind of splashy here on the FA19, whereas, okay, I did describe the treble here on the FX17 as being not quite on the safe side. It is leagues better than the treble that we got here on the FA19. And just overall, I think the tonality on this set is just kind of weird and wrong. Like vocals don't quite sound natural. Now there is kind of like a nice, I guess, side effect of the slightly odd tonality, and that I would describe the FA19 as sounding a little bit stagier, a little bit wider and like broader in its sense of head stage presentation. But for me, that all takes a backseat to all the other things that the FX17, in my opinion, just does a lot better. So for me, this is really no contest. I think the FX17, if you're looking for an upgrade from the FA19, I usually don't like this word upgrade, but it's just better in kind of every way. So yeah, and I would take that. Now, a couple of other IMs that would be interesting to compare it to would be the dunno Glacier. Similarly priced, I think this is $1,350 US. I was gonna say $1,300, but how do you add 50 to that number? You gotta say the whole 1,000. But anyway, these ones actually are made out of the stainless steel, and you kind of get that, I was saying like this kind of looks like stainless steel, well, there you go. Head to head, they look pretty indistinguishable. Well, actually, if anything, I think the Glacier might look a little bit glossier and a little bit deeper and richer. Ooh, interesting. Yeah, you should have gone with the matte design here over there, Fiio. But the Glacier is a very different sound signature, whereas I'd maybe describe this as like an exciting version of the new Meta sound signature. This is like a nice, kind of exaggerated version of the Harman sound signature, which you could describe as kind of like the old Meta. It's got more bass boost on the Glacier. It's got more contrast about it. It sounds more V-shaped in contrast to the FX17. Because of that, both of them have like a nice, real strong sense of that, again, that dynamics, that punch, and that fun contrast between the bass and the treble, but you're gonna get even more of that over here on the Glacier. The downside is that I think the vocal tonality is a little bit on the strained side. It's not a thing that usually bothers me, but in listening to them head to head, it is one of the things that I appreciate here about the FX17 is it's just got like a nice, easier, more textured and kind of like, I don't know, it's like open, like welcoming presentation about the vocal, whereas here it's a good vocal presentation, but it's more strained. Let's just say that. I would say that overall, however, I would say the treble is a little bit smoother on the Glacier. I think it's also a tribrid. I forget the driver configuration on this set. I could look it up, but it doesn't really matter. Because yeah, the overall experience is that I think the treble's a little bit smoother. The bass is even more textured and dynamic, but it is a little bit more contrasty overall. And because of that, the tonal balance is not quite right. So between these two, honestly, I would have a hard time deciding. I do actually like the fit here on the Glacier. You can see that it's a little bit more aggressively molded and it fits me a little bit more stable, but it's actually heavier. And because of that, it actually even wants to fall out of my ear a little bit more so. Sound quality wise, they kind of trade blows, but in different ways. So hopefully you have an idea of which kind of direction you would bias for your preferences. overall, I think I'd probably lean more toward the FX17 though, actually, which is interesting. But let me pull in one other IM that I know a lot of people are talking about right now, and I've only got it on hand for about another 2 hours. So we're gonna do this comparison now. This is the Fiio Audio Monarch Mark IV. Price on this is $1,150, I believe. Also a tribrid set. It's got ESTs. I think it only has 2 ESTs though, whereas this has got 8 ESTs. What are you doing? I'm just kidding. The number of ESTs doesn't matter. It's just wild that they put 8 ESTs in this thing. Like, is that oh, let me check my notes. Is it really 8 ESTs? It is really 8 ESTs. Jeebus. Okay, anyway, sorry. In terms of how these two IMs compare, in terms of fit, I'll just say this, like this IM fits me, this IM doesn't fit me very well. It is quite girthy and long here in the nozzle, and because of that, it just doesn't really fit into my ear. This part, which is meant to kind of match the folds of the concha bowl, just doesn't really contact my concha bowl. And because of that, I kind of have a hard time fitting this IM comfortably. So that honestly does kind of influence also my impressions of the sound, because the whole time I'm just kind of a little bit distracted by the fit. But in terms of the sound, they're actually quite different. I would say that the Fiio Audio Monarch Mark IV is, okay, well, this is kind of more of that dense, contrasty, textured sound. The Mark IV is more of a light, kind of airy, vocal forward sound. I think it's stronger in terms of a sense of resolution about it. If you're looking for just like trying to extract every last bit of detail from like vocal texture and stuff like that. Honestly, the Monarch Mark IV does a fantastic job of that. The downside is that for me, it just ends up coming across with quite a bit less body, less weight, less gravitas. It doesn't have a lot of that density and that kind of dynamism that I really like about the FX17. Now it does have this bass switch mode where you can engage rumble mode and get a lot more low end out of it. And I think that it does actually do a good job of filling out the low end and making it feel more full sounding, but you nonetheless never really get that same tactile bass experience that I think that the FX17 does better. So overall, between these two, there's some things that I would prefer about the tonality here on the Monarch. And again, pulling out the vocal forwardness, the resolution, the texturing of that is all really kind of fantastic. But nonetheless, I always find it just a little bit unengaging to listen to, whereas the FX17 is frankly always pretty engaging, which I guess will lead us into my conclusion of this review. Obviously, look, $1,500 is a lot of money to spend on an earphone. But if you're gonna do it, like this is definitely not a bad way to do it. It's got a nice titanium build. I think it looks pretty handsome, maybe a little bit on the plain side. Sound-wise, it is just kind of checking a lot of boxes for me. Is it perfect? I don't think it is. I think it could be better. But I will say that I think this is not just Fiio proving me wrong, that they can do a $1,000 plus IM. I actually think this is the best IM that Fiio has ever made. Which, yeah, I'm gonna give this thing 4 stars out of 5. If you wanna check it out, I've got it linked in the description down below. And while you're down there, if you haven't yet, please do hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, ding the YouTube bell, join me on Discord, also linked down below, and I'll catch you in the next super review. Cheers.
Join with the force of reviews, we now have the tools to brave the misleading world of audio fools. Hey, this review is super, and so are you. Grab your headphones, sniff a graph, and share your thoughts in this pursuit. Let's get into the future. Take it, let's just with this in the game. I'm up for feeling rich, me, say, I'm king,